Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast for people who are ready to clear the physical, the mental, and the emotional clutter that's been weighing them down. I'm Melanie Cohen, your host, coach, and guide. Each week, we talk about the clutter you can see and the clutter you can't. The stuff in your home, the noise in your head, the expectations, habits, and unmade decisions that quietly drain your energy. This isn't about perfection or minimalism. It's about creating space for what actually matters in this season of your life. Let's lighten up together, starting now. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, the place where we talk about all things clutter. Today, I have a special guest with me, Jenn Davey, based in the Philadelphia suburbs, lives with her hubby and their cat, Flash. Jenn worked over 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry, 13 of those in IT supporting web-based applications used in clinical research trials, where she was also co-chair of a disability employee resource group, championing inclusion and accessibility. Today, she's an accessibility consultant with Ripples of Access and serves on the advisory committee for the Chapters and Beyond Book Convention, coming to Wisconsin in 2027 as the Community and Inclusion Advisor. Her favorites include beef stroganoff, banana cream pie, sunsets, and waterfalls. Outside of work, she enjoys creating unique 3D artwork from layered cardstock, playing board games, and watching a good episode of NCIS. Welcome, Jenn.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, Jenn, I'm so happy to have you here today. Jenn and I get to spend a lot of time together between a networking group that we participate in, and I've convinced her to come and attend some of my workshops, and with the promise of her helping me out to make sure that my website and my social media and my email are accessible. So let's talk about why this is important to you and how you got here.
So, when I was working in corporate, a lot of times we had town hall meetings, and started to have issues with staying on track with what the people were saying, especially because our CEO would just talk, or he would just talk. And at the end of a segment, he'd be like, "So I hope you all got that," and because that's really important. And I'm like, "Wait, what did you just say?" And then they would be like, "Well, you can always go back and just rewatch." I'm like, "So you want me to take time away from my job I'm already overworking to go and do this when you could just put just a single slide together with just the key points?" And that just started to be a lot really problematic. And it's because of me having multiple disabilities, some of it being cognitive. So I need to have that ability to read while also hearing things. So that was one of my pet peeves. And then I got laid off. I started attending some self-improvement workshops. And there was one where they were giving a list of 20 items and they did not put anything on the screen. And even before I got a chance to say something, two or three other people are like, "Can you share that?" And they're like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't come up with notes. I'll do it. I'll share it later." And it took like 3-4 days before that information came up. And that really, it was not just a pet peeve. Like, I was angry to the point where I actually decided to drop that group. And I realized that's what I need to do is I want to work with other entrepreneurs to make, because they don't have an HR group to support them. They don't have the supports that people in corporate do. And a lot of times, if you are not exposed to what other people with disabilities are experiencing, or people with different learning capabilities or methods, you don't know how to adapt or accommodate them. And so I really am passionate of making sure that everybody understands that there's so many little changes that you can make, that they don't take a lot of time, they don't take a lot of money or effort, and they can just make life easier for not just those with disabilities, but for everybody.
Thank you. You said so many things that we have to cover. And one of them is, you and I've talked about this before, and I am both a visual and auditory learner. And so I need both. I didn't realize the impact of how badly I needed both until I think my 50s. And I recognize that, you can't go back in time and you can't change things. But how would my education have been different? Whether we're talking about grade school, middle school, high school, or college. And I think where it affected me, where we saw it affecting me was as I entered middle school and went into high school, because I was like straight A's in grade
Yeah.
school. And it all of a sudden, I think it was how much information was coming at me. And when it's that much information, I needed support and guidance to be able to follow along. So I love that you're doing this work. I love that you're in support of small business owners, because I think small business owners have a tendency to care more than larger corporations.
Mhm.
And so you're addressing the fact that there are clients you don't get if you're not
Right.
accessible to them. So what kind of work do you or what kind of things do you help clients achieve with accessibility? Or what are the things in their businesses that need to change?
So I provide training where we actually go over understanding how people with disabilities use the internet, use the web, because they may use assistive technology like a screen reader or, for example, transcripts and closed captions. Those are considered assistive technology. And one of the things I learned in my training is somebody that is blind, they actually can use a screen reader and then have a machine to type all their stuff out in braille right immediately at that moment, which is like, it kind of sort of blows my mind. But I want to be able to teach other people what, how people with disabilities use the internet, but I also help them understand why I don't just say, here's a list of everything that's wrong. Here's why it's wrong. Here's how it impacts everybody. And here's why it's important for you to change it to improve your ability to have have that engagement and that connection with potential clients, as well as some things actually improve your SEO, your search engine optimization. For any change, it benefits people with disabilities, everyday people that may not have a disability. It also has benefit for your company too.
Right, right. What are the common things that you see that small businesses are not doing or missing out on or doing in a way that's not a good fit?
So one of the things is I've noticed that a lot of small businesses love to be creative. And they go to marketing businesses and they're all about the design and the pretty and the fancy and the glittery. And so a lot of times they'll use fancy scripts or fonts. They will use pictures where there is images in the background and then text on top. And they may not realize that it's a problem because the computer suggested, like, this is a default.
Uh,
So they don't realize, they think, "Oh, well, the computer's suggesting it, so it should be fine, should work." And that's one of the big challenges.
I gotcha. All that makes so much sense. You had me thinking, or I was thinking before we got on today, what are the things that happen when I'm on the computer that I find difficult? And so there were two things that came up. One, I've been using Zoom for longer than the pandemic. The company that I worked for, we were all essentially remote. And so all of our trainings and things like that happened on Zoom. And then all of a sudden, everyone was on Zoom and everyone was using really fun backgrounds like beach scenes and, Paris, the Eiffel Tower behind them, or other things. And it actually is very disorienting to me. And so when I've been asked to use backgrounds, I've had to say, I find it disorienting when I'm looking at someone else with a background, because you move and then all of a sudden you're on camera or you're not, or your arm disappears
Right.
into the vastness. I find it very disorienting, but worse when it's me. And, call it low level vertigo, or call it the dizziness that comes with age. but I am never going to ask someone to not do it. Do you encounter that at all? Do you hear people talking about that, or is it just me?
So there is actually a Zoom background. There's a couple where it actually has motion to it. So there is a beach theme that I was going to use, but I noticed the waves actually move. And then there's one where you're in space and it drifts slowly, but it's enough.
All of a sudden.
It's just like a dark, and then you just have the stars.
Mhm.
You can look down, and when you look back up at the person, you're like, wait, weren't those over there? So, there is definitely there's that level of, people with vertigo, migraines, problem for
Light
people that
sensitive.
have light sensitivity, vision impairment, because, and it could actually be just that slight change can actually be so disruptive, they can't focus on the meeting or what's being said right away.
I understand. I totally
Yeah.
understand. And I don't feel like I need to get to the root of what the problem is, because the reality is that, a Zoom background or, on any other, platform is not going to make or break my ability to function. I just find that it's distracting, and maybe I'm not 100% in because of that. There's one other thing, and that is my need to be able to read things clearly. And this is not just on websites. This is, like a book or whatever. A large paragraph with a
Yeah.
lot of information makes me go like this. And so if people were to go back and look at my show notes, look at the show notes. If you saw my social media posts, follow me on social media, or my emails, join my email list. I do a lot of breaks and
Yeah.
more. And so I know in some cases it would be like, that's not a new paragraph. I need it to be a new paragraph because I need to be able to see. I think more people need this than they realize. But
Absolutely.
so tell me what your thoughts on that.
So I actually just the other day, I had looked at somebody's social media post, and I swear it was at least 20, 30 lines, just huge paragraph. And they started doing the TLDR, um, abbreviations, too long, didn't read. Well, I am almost thinking we need to have one that says too complex, too bulky, because for me, myself, I have some vision impairment where words actually shift from line to line. And so when it's that big block, forget it. I just can't even concentrate. I can get through maybe the top two lines. After that, I lose anything. I can't even figure out where I'm at. And so that is definitely another change. And I think there might actually be a web accessibility standard that relates to that, to break things up so it is more manageable and understandable for people with dyslexia, with the vision impairment that I have, but also just in general. Um, I mean, if you're reading a book, you expect it, but when you are reading something online, you're not expecting a full paragraph.
Right. Right. 100%. We are on the same page on that one too. Cool. When did you become aware in your own life that you had needs that were different than other people's?
I would have to say it was in high school. After I actually had 4 concussions when I was in elementary school, and then I had a 5th concussion in my sophomore, junior year. And after that, so I always had problems with doing the reading comprehension. I was awesome at grammar. I'm still good at grammar, but give me literature, reading comprehension, forget it. That was my worst subject, as well as history, because I had problems reading, I had problems remembering those types of dates. But if it was a date I experienced myself, I could remember it. But it really got to be a problem in college when it was so much, information overload, and a professor wanted slow down. And at the time, although I knew about the ADA because I had actually done a huge, project on it in history lesson about the ADA, I didn't realize the other part of it for the education level, and that I didn't think about the possibility of even going and asking for help for, for all of those lessons. And I actually started to I went for science, and I was really scared about my upper level classes because of the fact that it's so much, so much. And when I found out my campus was turning to a college, I'm like, awesome, because now I'll have small classes and my tests actually were verbal. So I could actually talk it through without and I could actually read the body language of my prof, and I could tell if I was going in the right direction. And I think that actually helped, because if I was to do it on paper, I would not have passed at all. That was part of it. And then just as and then in my 20s, I got an autoimmune form of arthritis. So that was a different type of accommodation. That's actually when I realized I needed to get a handicap placard because I couldn't move so much. I started using the electric carts. And so that was a lot to take in and accept.
Right. Sure. Sure. Again, you talk and I take a million notes because there's so many things I want to go back to. So first of all, no one's going to be surprised when I say that I've had a lot of concussions. I was a gymnast. I landed on my head more times than we can count. How were you getting concussions? What was it that you were getting into trouble with?
So the first four were either because I was riding my bike and the alley behind us was actually pebbles. So if I just turned the wheel too fast, I'd fall over. But
And that
then,
was when none of us wore helmets in the 70s
no,
and 80s. Yeah, we
exactly.
didn't.
And there was one time where I was coming down the hill from the small, what you would consider as a corner shop. But for us, it was a mile away because we were in the country. But going down the hill, there was a railroad track, and a couple of times I'd actually go down the edge, and my front tire would hit the side of that railroad track, and I just, you know, fall over. But I don't think that actually, so I might have had concussion from that and just never went to the hospital for it. But the other one was where I was on the jungle gym and I could never figure out why I kept falling. And it wasn't until actually 1 or 2 years ago where I was having problems reading and the words were starting to move on the page. And I go and talk to specialists and they're like, "Oh, I think you've had this condition since you've probably been, preschool age before even grade school." And here what happens is that where most people, the two images from your eye merge in front of your face, mine's 3 feet away. So I would shift and my less dominant eye would think the bar's still there and it's not. And I put all my weight onto that missing bar, and then I'd fall.
Mm.
And then in high school, the one in high school, it was just me and another student colliding. He was running, I was walking, we collided, and I fell on the back of my head. And I actually have a sixth concussion, which I had in my 30s, and that was just because I tripped over my own 2 feet.
I think many of us, I mean, people all the time can't understand how I had been a gymnast for all those years on a balance beam in the bars and tumbling and all the things. And I can't walk a straight line at the end of the day. I think when I was a kid, it was like I was using up all the straight line walking in the gym.
Right,
And I think now a lot of it is you don't pay attention quite the same way as you do when you're trying to walk on a balance beam that is this wide, no thumb, that's that wide
right.
and at 4 feet in the air. Um, yeah, okay, so we both have landed on our heads a few times doing different things. The other thing I had written down, I wanna go back to the whole, like, how long is the paragraph thing? I don't wanna, like, beat a dead horse on this one, but, I am told by my parents and other people a generation older than me that as a child, they were convinced that I was gonna be an attorney or a lobbyist because I could lobby. I could get on a soapbox and I can convince people. But the reality is, I never would have been able to read much of a law journal. It's just so much. I would probably have to start the same sentence like 20 times before I'd say, you know what, never mind, no law school, done, out of it. But the other thing that came up from that was I, like you, I was at a very small college where I didn't have a single class that had more than like 20 students in it. And once I got to upper level classes, there were more like 10 or less people in the class.
Yeah.
But I went to college planning on one thing and ended up doing another because I wanted to be a sports psychologist. And that for me meant that I needed to study psychology and I needed to study exercise science, or it was called exercise science then. And the college has since changed it to kinesiology. So I thought for sure I needed those two things. And the exercise science class, I sat there and I was like, this is freaking physics.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought it wasn't going to be physics. It was like, just do the thing, run fast. That's good. Like pick up heavy things. So the professor was so kind when I was like, I want to take every class you offer, but I also want to pass. So I think I'm going to drop this, area. And I mean, he was very supportive of it. But what it made me think of, if you open the code of points, for those of you who don't know gymnastics the way I do, I'm about to, I'm about to fangirl on this. When you open the code of points, it gives you the name of the skill, and it gives you the value of the skill, and it describes it to you. But then they also have little gymnast figurines showing gymnast doing a back handspring. And it starts with her standing up and then shows her leaning back a little bit, and they go through the whole process. But when I look at those diagrams and they show the bars and they're like, and then you get here and then you release and you drop one arm and then you catch I'm lost. I cannot read these things at all. I'm not great with maps. Like I look at a map and I think, if I turn it the other way, then I'm going to be going in the right direction. And I say all of this because I want to normalize these kinds of conversations. And when people say things like, I don't understand why you can't figure out the map and the diagram, to say, we're not all made the same way. And I'm not saying this is a disability or an accessibility issue. I'm just saying, people be open to hearing that we're different kinds of learners, or visually we see the world differently, we think differently about the world, and that we need to give other people grace, especially when it's taking them longer to get to where you are.
Exactly.
No rushing people because they're not operating or learning at your speed.
Yeah. That was my problem I experienced in school with the literature
Mm.
comprehension. It was like, I don't understand why this is so hard for you. Well, maybe because I had to read that segment, that section 3 times and I still didn't get it. So, it is something that just because we have these differences, it's not something to put another one down or to think that you're better than another. I mean, my whole thing is, if everybody was at the exact same level, could do everything everybody else could do, this would be a very boring life.
100%.
And that's why, and we're all made differently, all of our experiences and our approaches and just the way that our experience with teachers, with friends, with at home, whether or not we watched TV when we were little or we had computers, it all leads to how we engage and interpret the world.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
that's why, although there's some issues that are barriers specifically for people with disabilities, but it can help other people as well.
Right. So let's talk about some of the ways that, I think what we've said was very tech heavy in terms of businesses being accessible. But you and I both talked about something in the pre-interview, and that was I worked in retail for
Hmm.
many years, and that was my first career. And then I worked for the manufacturer, but it still had me in stores. When I was pregnant and when I was at my highest weight ever, and I worked in the lingerie department, those racks are close together. hard to navigate getting down and getting up again. And retailers have to be better about this. And I think they are a little better. I don't think they're better.
I think when it comes to department stores, and because department stores have their client base or their audience is pretty much everybody. They have so much product that they want to make sure that they have available for everybody. And I totally agree. Those racks are so close together. There was actually a store that my grandmother shopped at religiously. And when it was hard enough, even I remember even as a kid, when I was like 5 or 6, going through the store and going through those racks, I'd be hitting the clothing. When they're that close for a kid to be hitting clothes, and then, let's just add, go 10 years later, my grandmother's now in a wheelchair. She would actually sit in the aisle and we would have to go in and grab the clothes for her. She like, "Oh, I think I like that." And we'd actually take it off the rack and hold it up as high as we could. And I'm 5'3" and those racks are like 5 feet tall. So it was even harder, but I remember, like, it was almost like I was Vanna White showing off the clothes because she couldn't get to it. And that's something that a lot of they think, "Oh, I have all this space, let's fill it up." Not realizing, and it's not just the people with disabilities, like you said, it could be somebody that's pregnant, somebody that is overweight. It could be somebody going, parent with a stroller, or
And God
and it
forbid if it's a double stroller. I mean, I've been there.
and
Been
you're
there.
pregnant on top of it.
My God. And it's not just that. I was thinking, I had a pocketbook and a
Yeah.
diaper bag. And I get it. People are like, but there are places for that in your stroller. Not when I had my kids. We didn't have all those fancy cup holders and
And you didn't have a basket under the seat, and there was no basket under the seat. And then and wheelchairs, they have a pocket in the back, and that's it. And it's
right,
very hard
right.
to, and if you put a purse off the back of a wheelchair, it's
Not
gonna hit
safe.
the wheels. And
That or someone's gonna steal it.
exactly. That's exactly how I think too. And so so even going shopping is you actually have to prepare to go shopping. Prepare your list, but prepare mentally and think about there's times where I'm like, how badly do I really need something at that store?
Mhm.
And it's gotten better now that it's post COVID. So many people have um, the online shopping, the curbside pickup, but a lot of stores went away, stopped doing the curbside pickup. And so it's just sometimes it's actually anxiety inducing just to go shopping. And it's because of those types of barriers. And it's like, how much can I handle? Am I already overloaded dealing with the stress? And can I handle that?
Right, right. That's a lot. It's a lot to take in, and I think there are a lot of people out there, they take everything you just said for granted, because they don't have to worry about all of these things when they're going shopping.
Some people think, well, it must just be me because nobody else talks about it. So maybe it's just me and I'm a problem. And so for that reason, it's not being talked about and it's not being told to the stores and the businesses.
It for sure is a conversation that needs to be normalized. There are so many conversations that,
Yeah.
we're normalizing more. Usually when I'm talking about that, I say that we haven't normalized conversations about mental health and we haven't normalized conversations about menopause and perimenopause. It's better. It's better. I want to say that, but it's not great. And we need to move towards that. This is yet another topic that needs to be normalized in a way that make people understand. It's not about understanding, because I say you don't have to understand what it's like to be me. You just need to be compassionate to know there are things that are harder for me than they are for you. Let's be patient when it comes to this. And when I say me and you, I'm talking about like anybody out there in the world. So, okay. So, this is the podcast about clutter. And one of the things that I talk about in clutter is how the physical clutter is affected by the mental and emotional clutter. And high levels of clutter are usually based on a host of mental health issues like PTSD, trauma, big T trauma, little t trauma, ADHD, depression, anxiety, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I know for so many people sounds incredibly counterintuitive, but it's not. It makes a whole lot of sense. And there are other things that can affect our ability to manage the physical and the mental and the digital clutter and the things that I talk about. Tell me about you, the things that make clutter difficult.
So one of the things that actually I've recently realized because I've been working with you is my perfectionism. Because it's, well, I have to do it right the first time. And if I'm not going to do it right the first time, why should I even start?
Delay,
Because I'm
delay, delay.
exactly. And then there's also with my physical and my physical disabilities, it's can I actually stand long enough without being in pain? Can I bend over, pick up the thing? And a lot of times there's also just the energy level between my narcolepsy as well as my physical arthritis. It's, well, what can I do? Do I have the energy? And there's a lot of times that just in general, people with chronic illnesses, whatever they are, they have to figure out what is most important for them to spend their energy on. So a lot of times the energy goes to things like grocery shoppings or making dinner, doing the dishes, getting your kids ready for school, getting them to and from school, their activities, and then regular work. And so by the end of the day, your battery level is very low. And it's not as easy as just plugging it in like our phones, you can just plug it into power and it get boosted right away. Some people, they need days just to just to re-energize or get past that fatigue. And then so there's that physical, the pain, as well as the energy level, which I find is my problem a lot of times.
And I mean, and let's couple physical exhaustion with mental exhaustion. You may have the physical energy, but maybe not the mental energy, and vice versa. It is one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of ridiculously simple goals. We've just started a monthly event where we do a 1 hour session, and it's a live decluttering. And we spend 30 of the 60 minutes actually in declutter mode. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are like, pshaw, 30 minutes, pshaw. But the reality is, you can get so much done, and it forces us to stop the delay. If I can't get it all done now, I'm going to wait until I have the time. I'm not going to have the time. I don't have the wherewithal right now. I'll wait until I have the wherewithal. I'll wait until I have the free time. I'll wait until there's someone here to help me, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, what may have just been a little bit of clutter is now something that's very big because we've been delaying, 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 not buying into the success of having completed a small task that gets to be, the building blocks of much harder or more significant tasks. It is one of the reasons why we see higher levels of clutter in the aging community. It is not the only reason, but, if they don't have the energy, they don't have the physical capabilities that they once had, there's another thing, and I think it's that our things become like proof of life.
Mhm.
And, our memory isn't as great as we get older. So having the things somehow feels like it will help us have the memories, as opposed to relying on, the memories. And when you think about all of that, that's not just the elderly. There are all these other things that are making it harder to manage. And at the end of the day, the clutter in and of itself is the thing that can be dangerous or overwhelming, in ways that maybe the average person doesn't understand.
Right.
So, this is my podcast about clutter. So, every single guest that's been on this show has been asked, what is your clutter? So, maybe what is the clutter that affects you the most or is the most challenging? Or just talk about one form of.
So I actually have two businesses. So I also have a craft business where I make 3D layered art. So I have the mental clutter where I have ideas for both businesses bouncing around, and they sometimes fight over who gets to be on top of my mind. So I have that. That's a lot. And that is actually mentally draining. And then I also, like I said, I do cardstock. I have over 300 different shades of color of cardstock in two different sizes. And it can be overwhelming. Like when I'm getting ready for a craft show or I have a lot of different orders at one point, I will just sit there and just do, 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 do. And then I have all this trash, all this clutter. I'm like, oh, should I keep this? Let me just hold on to this big piece because I only cut a quarter of it. So hold on to it because I'll use it later on. And I just recently got rid of a whole bunch. I had like a huge box of it because I'm like, I'm never going to use it. But then my last project, I'm like, I know exactly what color it is. I only need an inch of it and it worked. And I'm like, okay, how can I handle both of it? I have so much of the cardstock left over, and I have that challenge of do I keep it because I can use the little pieces again, or do I get rid of it? And in a way, it was helpful for my last project because I just need less than an inch. But after talking with you, I am realizing I do need to go through it and say every 3 or 6 months or some time frame, just go through it. And if I haven't really used it, then get rid of it. Or if I have too much of the same color, then maybe I need to focus on that and actually use those scraps.
Love that. I'm a fan of sustainability. I'm a fan of doing what we can to support the environment. So there is hesitation to throw away that little piece of fabric and that little piece of paper. Sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission to do it.
Right.
Like it's okay because it's making me crazy, or I can't look at it one more time, or it's slowing me down. I think clutter slows us down because we have to navigate around it and we have to do other things and move the thing and all the things. Okay, Jen, what have we missed? What's something that you want listeners to know?
So I think it's important that everybody realize that if you're having a challenge, you're not able to engage with a business, or even it could be a business, it could even be just friends or government or anybody. If you're having a problem, ask for help because of the fact that for businesses and government, they have to provide accommodations for you as part of the Americans with Disabilities Act. But it's more than just that. They don't know what they don't know. So if you don't speak up, you don't say, hey, I'm having a problem with this, then they won't know that there's an issue. They won't improve or they won't change because they don't know to. So don't sit there and suffer in silence because most likely you're not the only one having that same issue. So, and you don't have to bring it up like with a lot of other people. You could just follow up and say, hey, next time, do you mind modifying this? Or I'm having a hard time reading this. Do you have it in another format? Or do you have this in a simplified version? So there's all these other ways that you can do it. So I would always say, just ask. And what's the worst they're gonna say is no, right? And if you don't ask anyways, you're getting the answer no. But you never know. They might be like, well, I didn't think about that. And I think I'm going to change that because I actually have that problem when I'm the audience. So I never thought about it because I was taught this or that from, these are the best practices from all these business coaches. And I never thought about how it impacts my audience.
So I'm about to ask a question, and this may or may not make the podcast, but I'm going to go for it anyway because you had me thinking. In our State of the Union, with the elimination of DE&I and things like that, do you have the same fear I'm having in the moment that as a nation we're going to stop caring whether or not there is a Disabilities Act?
So I've actually been thinking about that. And what's interesting is that in 2024, there was an update made to the ADA for Title II, which is for local government. So your cities, your municipalities, as well as the state. And that update actually indicated that the municipality, like all the government and anybody that receives federal government monies, actually has to have their websites updated to meet certain level of standards. They're actually supporting the people with disabilities that are bringing these lawsuits to light. They are actually engaging in it. So that has actually given me hope that the lawmakers know that that we need to keep this going, and the courts, the judges also are standing by it. And I think it's really more of the executive branch that's having that issue, and it's not the legislative or the judicial branches.
Right. I appreciate you saying that. And I have a feeling we are going to leave this in. I think you and I both live in states where the executive branch could say no more. And we live in states that are going to keep things going
Right.
because they care about people.
Right.
I don't know how else to put it. I say all the time, well, I'm not going to get political, but you know what? I don't know that this is political. I think, when it comes to common sense and the care and compassion for people is not political, or it shouldn't be political. So
Right.
I'm glad we did touch on that. I really am.
And I think part of it is because everybody has already been disabled at some point in their life already. And there's a higher chance that they are going to become disabled as they continue to get older, as they age. I mean, just part of the aging process that we've already talked about. A lot of what comes with aging also exists in certain disabilities. And so people can relate better to that.
Mm.
And I think, and just in that regard, I think that's why it is going to stick around. They may call it something different, but it's still there because they still know it exists and it's still
Right.
impactful.
I'm glad we touched on that. That was a good thing to touch on. Jenn, I
Yes.
thank you so much for being here today and sharing your genius. I think there are a lot of people out there that will be happy to hear this episode because they'll feel heard and seen in it. And I
Absolutely.
think there are other people who are going to appreciate it because you said a lot of things. We talked about a lot of things that people just don't think about because it doesn't affect them. And I don't mean in a malicious way with bad or ill intent, just not having the knowledge yet.
And like I said, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And that's why I am an advocate as well as wanting to work with everybody to let them know the issues.
Awesome. Awesome. All of Jenn's information is going to be in the show notes, but is there anything that you would like to call out specifically, Jenn?
So my plan is that every couple months I'll be having free workshops. So I'd be more than happy for you to join and attend so that you can just learn more about how people with disabilities use the internet, as well as what the most common issues are, the most common barriers, and just let it be more of a opening to just continuing the ripples of access.
Jenn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Lighten Up the Art of Living Clutter-Free. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use just a little bit of lightness. If you're ready for deeper support, you can work with me one-on-one or join my Lighten Up Clutter-Free Mindset Group program. You can find all the details at my website, thoughtfullycoaching.com. Until next time, progress over perfection. Messy action is better than no action at all. So let's lighten up.